All right, guys. So when you first start out, the world of Planet Crafter seems very, very, very large, and it can be hard to find all of the resources that you're going to need to progress your world until the end of the game. So what this guide's going to do is just run you through from a late stage perspective and show you where all of the important resources that you are going to need through your entire journey in the game are located. Now, some of the paths I'll show you, you might not have access to right now. But as you increase sort of the terraform level on your planet, more and more paths show up. The important part here is just that you know where a lot of these key zones are so you can continue to progress your world and never truly get stuck trying to find resources. So the location of all the resources that we're going to show is all going to originate from this position here. Maybe not on the rock, but definitely here. This is the crater where a lot of the game starts out. I know there are multiple landing zones, but every sort of direction we give will come from this landing zone, as it's probably one of the easiest and more recognizable places in the game. So what I think we're going to start out with first is aluminum, as this is one of the few resources you are going to need really early in the game. Aluminum actually comes from one particular place in the game, and it is over in this general direction. These are actually large aluminum deposits. You will find a lot of aluminum scattered throughout the ground here. Now, there are other zones later in the game where you will just randomly find aluminum laying around, but this is the actual aluminum biome. This is also where you will want to set up a drill, as drills in this zone will mine for aluminum, and this is a great source of aluminum early game, both finding it on the ground as well as mining for it once you get access to the drill. The next resource I want to show you is actually iridium. Iridium is a resource that you will use very early in the game. There are several different places to find iridium, but we're going to showcase just a couple of the easiest to get to that you will find early in the game, and a couple that might be a little bit further out. So the first and easiest source of iridium to find is actually under the sand dripping from the cliffs in this direction. Most zones change their color to give you a good idea of what is going to spawn in there. So in this instance, you can see that this is a red zone. This is where you will be able to mine for iridium, as well as find it just generally laying around on the map. Now, I do think that another source of iridium is actually out past this wreckage. So we're going to go ahead and go this way and show you where the iridium mine would be. As you can tell, most caves have a very distinct entrance that you can sort of tell is actually a cave entrance. This is another zone that has iridium in it, and as you can see, the zone turned red when we came in. This will let you know that you can place a drill in here and mine for iridium. Now, the third iridium location that I want to show you is actually going to be someplace that's on the far end of the map. And more than likely, you will not venture there until later in the game. But I do want to make you aware of it. I'm going to take the shortcut to get there, and then we will take the long way to get back. So you see both directions on how to get to the third iridium site. From here, you want to turn around and look at the crashed ship on the cliff. Up here, you will find a cave. Depending on what your terraform level index is, it may or may not be blocked off with ice. When you come out of this cave structure, depending on what your terraform level is, this has the possibility of being a smoldering crater that you cannot see the bottom of. there will be a crashed iridium meteor at the bottom of this crater on the hump there if your terraform level is too low. Once your terraform level gets higher, though, a lot of the iridium will sort of leave the zone, and you'll be left with this basin. One quick tip that I do want to point out that is not necessarily about a specific resource is the fact that there is actually a ledge over here on the far side that is very hard to see when there is smoke. And this ledge has a ladder in it that will take you to some really, really good resources at every stage of the game. So you should be aware that this exists and check it out if you are looking for a lot of good non-iridium resources at the early stages of the game. Okay, so I did say we would take the long way back, and we will. Along the path on the long way back, we will actually go through another zone, and that zone will have a lot of rare in-game materials that you can find just laying around. I would definitely say to pick up any Pulsar Quartz that you see. They should be pink. As well as any Zeolite that you happen to see along the way, which will be white crystals. These are things you will need in the end game, and they're great to have before you get there. There are a couple decent wreckages out here that you need to be aware of as well. One is beyond the waterfall back there. There is a good size wreckage back there that you can loot a lot of really nice items from, but it is not necessarily a resource mine, so we're not going to go out of our way to show it to you. But if you want to find it, it is back there. This is the in-game zone I was talking about, at least one of them, and you will find a lot of more rare resources laying around here. What I'm trying to do, instead of showing you all of the different individual resources, is sticking by the wall, because this will be the easiest way for you to navigate early game until you don't have to worry about oxygen. But this zone out here will have a lot of really good resources, as well as a few great loot zones. So on the way back, you can use this little osmium cave as a shortcut, as long as everything has thawed out based on your terraform levels. It will bring you out to these sort of jagged peaked rocks, which you have probably seen if you've explored the zone. And then you can follow these back as long as you follow that left wall, and it will take you back to the original start point and will get you back to your starting base location. So there are actually several places to find sulfur. Sulfur is one of the resources that you will find in a lot of different zones once you start getting into the higher tier resources. However, at the early stages of the game, you will want to find a very easy dedicated sulfur mine. While there are multiple locations, like I previously said, I'm only going to show you the one because this one should be the easiest to get to and will provide all of the sulfur you are going to need for the rest of your time playing Planet Crafter. So once you head into the Iridium mine, make a left up these two ramps and out the back. Once you break out this back zone, you will find a giant sulfur field. The sulfur will be down in the gas on the bottom of the mine. There is a lot of sulfur here, probably more than you will need in the beginning stages of the game. But toward the middle and later stages of the game, you will want to put a drill here and have this mine the sulfur that you need to help you for the end game. The next resource we really want to look at is uranium. Uranium is something you will start to need at later stages of the game, and there are two very decent mines. One is to the left and one is to the right. We have the one to the left marked, so we'll go there first, and then we'll take you to the one out to the right. Now, while I'm aware that your place will not be as bright and colorful and full of vegetation and life as my current world is, it will not change the location of the resources. So I am trying to show off landmarks that will be there all the time. That way it's easier for you to find and manage these locations. If you find your way down into this valley, you'll see a giant rock outcropping here with a few rocks laying over top of each other and a little piece of land jetting out. If you follow this land out, you will walk over and see a pillar of stone. If you go in that pillar of stone, you will find a uranium mine. This is a great place to set up a uranium drill, but do keep in mind that I think this has to be a tier 2 drill, but I could be wrong. You can always set a level 1 extractor and see if that will get the stone, and if not, you might just have to switch it to a level 2. Okay, so for the second uranium mine, you actually want to head east, and you want to go past the aluminum out towards the giant ring that you may be able to see in the distance, depending on what your terraform level is. So once you get out to the Gate Desert, sort of follow this rock wall around. Now there's a good chance that these giant sinkholes here will not have water in them, depending on what stage of the game you're at. But continue to follow this rock wall around. Down into this small valley. And then off to the left here, you should see the second sort of uranium zone / place that you can make a uranium mine. Super alloy is a resource that you will find that you are going to need a lot of. Now, until you have access to a tier 2 drill, it can be a little tedious to get, but I will show you 3 separate locations. One of those is actually where you can place your super alloy drills later on in the game. The first zone is actually very close to this spawn. If you look, you can see a set of cliffs here in the background. If you go through the cliffs to the back side, you can actually climb up on top of the cliffs. Now you can either go through the cliffs like this or you can go around them. It really doesn't matter. But what you're looking for is this structure here. From this structure, climb up to the back side, and you can parkour your way across, and you will find super alloy just littered around the top of all of these different paths. Now, obviously, there's none here for me because I did gather them all at an earlier stage of the game. One thing to note when you are running around and parkouring this is do not use your jetpack. Your jetpack sets its flight height based on the ground below it. So if you try to jetpack across this gap, it will suck you down to the ground. Instead, find gaps that you can clear and then just manually jump them. Do this and gather all of the super alloy from this zone, and that should be enough to help you in the very early stages of the game. Now, the second easy way to get super alloy is actually past the iridium mines and past the sulfur fields into the actual sand waterfall. So if you go through the iridium mines and then take a right in the sulfur plains, you can sort of see the sand waterfall off in the distance. Now, when you get to this sand waterfall, if you are looking for super alloy, you will actually find it in the sand itself. So you need to walk in the path where the sand is actually coalescing and coming down. If you follow this path around, you will find super alloy scattered on the ground throughout this entire zone. Obviously, there is none going to be there for me on this playthrough because I have already pilfered it all. But this is a great spot to go and get super alloy in the early to mid game. The third and last major place to go and actually get super alloy is from the super alloy mine. Now, if you do not have tier 2 drills, you will not be able to mine super alloy at this point, but you can find super alloy on the ground. So we're going to head out into the desert here, and we're going to follow this rock wall past the Iridium mine. You can kind of see off in the distance, there are actually some stone pillars outside of the cliff face to our left. That is actually the entrance to the super alloy mine. So once you break around the corner, you should find super alloy laying around on the ground. In here, you can place your tier 2 drills, and they will get you a lot of super alloy. This is one of the places I would suggest putting several drills, as you will be using a lot of super alloy throughout the entire rest of the end game. So now we're getting to a couple of the last high tier resources you will need in Planet Crafter. One of them is osmium. Osmium is actually found in a lot of the shortcut paths you will use once your terraform level gets high enough to unfreeze a lot of the ice. We're going to show you a couple that are very close to the starting area, but realistically, almost every shortcut tunnel you use in the game will lead through some type of osmium. So the path I'm going to take you to actually has two different entrances. The one is going to be down here through the sulfur mine, which I want to show you because it will be the easiest one for you to locate, and then I will show you where it comes out. So you go through the Iridium mine and across the sulfur fields. Once you get across this part of the sulfur field, you can see the waterfall directly out there, and you can see an opening here. This may or may not be blocked by ice depending on the stage of the game you're in, but this is one of the major osmium mines. This is also a really great shortcut path. This actually comes out close to the downed spaceship from near where you start the game. Another great source of osmium is actually over by the sand waterfall where we got the super alloy earlier. Once your terraform level is high enough, there is actually a cave below the sand waterfall that will open up and allow you access to a very small osmium mine. So as you see, we came through. There is sulfur on the ground, which we had talked about before, how sulfur kind of spawns in a lot of places that other high-end materials do. And this is no exception. This is a great place to find osmium, as well as pick up some more sulfur if you are a little low. For the third osmium place that we're going to show you is actually behind the start of the game. Once you traverse what is now a lake, but for you might still be a valley, you'll come back to a opening. We're going to follow it around to the right, and that should take us through a cave. That cave will be a great source of osmium if you run out of osmium from other locations. And as you traverse through, you will see the blue crystals, and that will let you know that this is where you will find a lot of osmium. This is a great spot to pick it up and a great shortcut to the end game black fields. One of the last resources you will find that you need is actually called zeolite. Zeolite is something that actually spawns on the open world if you're lucky enough to find an exposed tree root sticking out of below a rock. When these happen, you will see a little white crystal that forms on the tree root. You can go up and scan it and grab it from there. Another great source of this early on is actually in the Iridium mine that we pass through quite frequently. If you look at this middle column here, you will find that there is actually a tree root growing out of the side. Now, while you might pass this a dozen times and never realize, you can actually climb this object. When you get to the top, you will find a lot of zeolite crystals on the ground in this zone, as well as several containers and a few other items. This is something that I passed by probably a dozen times before I realized on accident that you could click it. It will bring you out up top here, so if you have a jetpack and you're comfortable with flying, you can fly down off, or you can always just reclimb back down the path. While the source of zeolite that we just showed you is a great source early game, it does not replenish. So after a while, once you start getting all of the crystals off of the exposed tree roots that you see while you're traversing around and clear that zone out up there, you might start to run out. Well, if you have access to a tier 2 drill, what you need to do is go back through the iridium mine, back across the sulfur field, and back into the osmium mine that we showed you earlier. If your terraform index is high enough, there will be a new path open to you, and this path will actually take you to the only place in the game where you can mine zeolite crystals. As you can tell when we come in, there are zeolite crystals hanging from the ceiling, which lets you know that this is a zeolite mine. From here, you can place a drill and mine as many zeolite crystals as you need. So I do feel like Pulsar Quartz is something we need to talk about because this is a very important end-game item. If you are not at the quote-unquote end of the game, you probably will not have access to this blueprint. The reason I bring this blueprint up is so you know that you never truly run out of these items. You will use Pulsar Quartz to make a lot of things. Some of them, once you make, you cannot break back down into their core components because once you use it, it is gone. So a fear for a lot of players, myself included, in the early game was I didn't want to run out of these. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways to get them, but at the end of the day, you are never truly locked out of anything because you can create these towards the end of the game to help you in case you did use your quartz for things that you could not get them back from. So while it is very much raining, since we have went through a lot of these zones previously, I feel comfortable taking you and showing you one of the places that you will find Pulsar Quartz naturally. And then after that, we'll talk about the other ways to get them that you can do even if you run out of finding them naturally. So I have found that Pulsar Quartz do tend to spawn just randomly if you're very lucky in some of the caves and pathways that we have taken. I think, though I can't necessarily remember, that the Zeolite cave had some Pulsar Quartz laying around in it, though not a lot. I can also tell you that the zone we are heading to did have Pulsar Quartz scattered throughout, though it was very sparse. What I do want to tell you is that one of the best ways I have found to find Pulsar Quartz early in the game is actually to salvage every wreckage and container that you find. I find that just scouring the map in zones away from the starting zone, checking blue containers, and looking for random wreckages, satellites, and ladders on the map is a great way to find and locate a lot of Pulsar Quartz. But this zone here will have osmium, zeolite, as well as Pulsar Quartz just laying around if you decide to walk through the zone. One thing I will tell you is you will see this sort of zone here, and I've scoured it, and I'm not going to really explain what is in here, but what I will tell you is there's not a lot of resources that you can't find other places in that particular cave. And the last major way I want to talk about getting Pulsar Quartz is actually from Pulsar meteors. These are very, very, very rare occurrences. When they do happen, they will bring Pulsar Quartz onto the map. So anytime you see a large single meteor that is the pinkish purple color, make sure to pay attention to it and go track it down. As sort of a side note, please keep in mind later on when you do start having plants spawn on your map that this is a plant and not a seed. These are actually used for different recipes, and this is actually how you get them, is by finding them on the open world. So this is sort of a bonus little tip. You just have to run around and try to find them. So I do want to show another great little place where you will find a lot of pulsar crystals or pulsar quartz early in the game, and that is actually due south if you come out of the cave to get to the sort of black sands zone. If you follow this around and look for these sort of stone landmarks, you'll start to see signs of previous life. When you come back here, there is actually a ladder as well as some buildings, and there are a lot of really good resources out and about in this zone. So definitely make sure to come out here and check this out. All right, everyone, that should be most of the major, hard to find resources and their easiest to find locations. I did not cover every location in the game because that would take too long and really nobody cares. You just need to know how to get to the closest ones the fastest. We also didn't cover all of the basic resources. By the time you get to where you're sort of running out of them, you will be getting more than enough of them through just passive drills and stuff like that. Especially when you get to the later stages of the game, you don't really need a lot of the early game resources. I also didn't go over all of the gold chest locations and every individual wreckage location. While both of these have a lot of really great resources in them, I didn't want to spoil the entire game for you. So you can go out and try to find them yourselves, as they're just nice bonuses and great ways to get additional resources. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and hopefully you're having a great time with Planet Crafter. Let me know down in the comments what you think and if you need any more guides for Planet Crafter. And as always, have a great day.